Britain and other leaders are calling on you to step down, to leave Libya, to leave your position of power. Will you do that?
Who would leave his homeland? Why do I leave my homeland?
Hi everybody, today I'm back with a quick playthrough review of TripleA's Axis and Allies scenario, the 2011 Libyan Civil War. I recently upgraded my version of TripleA. For years I've just been playing on an older version that didn't have this map. So after I updated, I noticed this one and said, yeah, I gotta play it. I'm gonna try an ultra history. I'll play as Gadaffi on the highest difficulty setting, see what happens. I added some multimedia in there for extra immersion. If you're wondering why this setup of all things, well, if you're here, you know me, and I'm into the offbeat stuff, anything obscure, that's me. And you know, I actually remember this happening in real life. And as a kid, I grew up during an era when the news portrayed Gadaffi as a boogeyman and a serious threat to Western interests. There was, of course, the USSR as the great evil empire. But then you also had a handful of smaller rogue states in the mix with a few tin pot dictators like Gadaffi, but he was always a bit different even within the class of evildoers in my estimation. And I mean, there's nothing quite like him for a leader on the world stage. He was a strange guy. He was more Bond villain-like. He was colorful, flamboyant. One day he's a fancy Bedouin with all these elaborate robes and a headdress, and the next day he looks like a bemedaled general. He had this lair in Tripoli where the Americans tried to blow him up in the 1980s that had this giant gold fist crushing what looked like a A4 Skyhawk. And he even had an all-female Amazonian personal bodyguard, female fighters. Look it up if you don't believe me. It was great stuff. It was like right out of the movie Octopussy. Now, even back in the 80s, I had the feeling the modern world wouldn't have room for men like Gadaffi moving forward. He'd be the last of his kind, you know, like a cartoonish supervillain ruling an entire country. It's probably wrong about that, but still, I say he was in a class by himself. He hung around for a long time. He ruled Libya for over 40 years. And by 2001, the post 9/11 period, he had even managed to rehabilitate his image in the eyes of the West because there was a new common enemy in Al-Qaeda, and obviously ultra-religious radicals hated him because he was way too materialistic. And then by 2011, another plot twist. You have the Arab Spring, and wow, did Gadaffi ever crash out publicly when that dissent spread into his own country. And it was just one catastrophic decision after the next, but mainly this preposterous defiance and hostility when faced with inevitable revolutionary forces. And we see finally, after all these years, the leopard just couldn't change the fact that it had spots, and the mask slipped, and all the worst qualities of the regime manifest again. But this time, the actions taken lit the fuse that ultimately blows up an entire country. And 30,000 people would die needlessly because he wouldn't step down. And he was almost 70 at the time. Like, what are you doing? He had money. Leave. I couldn't believe it as it played out. The Libyan Civil War was just pure insanity. 8 months of killing. It was just ridiculous. But anyway, we'll do some play-by-play here. This is actually a pretty neat scenario. If you want to give it a try, it's just a one-pager, like you just see everything. You don't need a smaller map. Everything's just laid out right in front of you. The interesting factors Gadaffi has to contend with is he has no ability to deploy planes. He starts with one, but NATO erected this no-fly zone over the country. So yeah, he can't deploy any aircraft. So the rebels have a distinct advantage in air power. His navy is going to be outclassed and destroyed, obviously, by the European coalition there. So I'm not even going to bother replenishing it. Don't have a lot of money, so you can only deploy, you know, maybe 5 units per round in Tripoli, and then 2 out of Saba. But that's 7 units. You usually can't afford that amount. So we'll try and stick to infantry. As you can see in the video there, the early stages of the uprising, you see the demonstrators. And that perhaps wasn't surprising. But what was, you see here the yellow hats, the hard hats of mercenaries that he hired to break up the demonstrators. And these are sub-Saharan Africans from Chad, Niger, Mali. And they just, went and killed people. And that just set the entire country on fire, basically. And this is where things like really kicked off. And I remember watching this live thinking, wow, this is a disaster. This is just a catastrophic mistake that Gadaffi made. Because it seemed, not everyone, he had loyalists, but the vast majority of the population here turn out and just, it's the end, basically, if he had any common sense. There's some of his tank battalions. The one interesting thing in real life that kind of set Libya apart from its cohorts is that he didn't maintain a gigantic standing army. So he didn't trust it. He had, loyalists, like very loyal, maybe like 5 tank battalions and special forces and stuff like that, but not a huge army. And here he is, like, with this ridiculous, he made a couple of these speeches, and I remember at one point he calls the demonstrators a bunch of rodents and insects, and he's the exterminator and all this stuff. It's just insanity. And the people smashing his monuments there. Anyway, this is one of the mercenaries captured by the rebels. Can you imagine what happens to him? It looks like he's going for a ride in the trunk of a car. But, that's the ugly nature of all this. For everyone to see, right? This is broadcast all over the news. So, have to maintain some armor, infantry armor, and artillery is going to be the formula, I think. Attack Saba from Mosul in the south. I have more armor than the rebels to start, it looks like. But you can't squander them. Like, this is a scenario teaches you to be cautious with what you do have if you're playing the loyalists here. Because if you ever get in a situation where you lose that advantage in armor, yeah, see, those are the 6 tank brigades there. Take Ashhati. The one cool thing about this too, Gadaffi starts with rockets, ballistic rockets. He just bombard Benghazi and Tobruk. There is technological development in this too. If you're playing the regime, I wouldn't waste too much resources on it. The key, I think it looks like in this scenario, is to raise as many infantry, cannon fodder, and artillery as possible. You see the rebels deploying a lot of infantry as well. The footage up on the right, top right, you can see this is a part of the story where Gadaffi closes off the borders of Libya, so the He erects all these checkpoints at the border crossing so presumably the rebels can't funnel in outside help. I'm not sure how successful it was. You get bombed too from coalition eras. TripleA just got bombed by tech tokens. There's Gadaffi's flag, the green flag there. Maybe do this once. Test my luck here. Yeah, that's about it. Should probably consider more anti-aircraft guns as well. Because Saba doesn't have any. I like that look from Gadaffi, the tracksuit. That was his best. His best look. He's got some special forces there. Yeah, the rebels you can extinguish the rebels fairly easily in the western half of the country. But if you just look at the way the territories are arranged, Ajdabiyah, the big one, south of Tobruk and Benghazi, it really protects their power base, and they can collapse into that territory and then explode out of it. But they're reasonably well fortified even in Sirte, which is, I think it was Gaddafi's home territory. Worth 2 as well. He's got 9 infantry. It wouldn't be divisions, it'd be like brigades or something. So he's stronger than the insert. It's going to take a couple turns to bring up enough forces to push them backwards from that position. Whatever my navy was made up of was destroyed like the first turn. So, yeah, Mad Max vehicle there. That looks like one of Gaddafi's, looks like a T-55 because the gap in the suspension is up the front. If it was a T-62, they would have sort of a longer tail. But yeah, deploying a tank right in the middle of the city. So we got a big battle here in Ajdabiyah. But yeah, see the rebels are pretty durable. At least on the coastline and to the east. I got artillery support. That in this game, that allows 1 artillery unit to support 2 infantry. So 1-to-2 ratio. Which is helpful. That's one of the few technological advancements in this game that can actually help Gaddafi. So I got lucky there. You just need more infantry, and $22 is not a lot, and you're also restricted by the number of units you can deploy. So between Saba and TripleA, it's a maximum of 7 units. So they can't go over 7. Counterattack into Beni Wali. That's tough for the rebels to hold because it borders the 2 territories. Well, borders 3 territories that I can get to very quickly. You can see Gaddafi had a 747 there, like his version of Air Force One. Like he did, as you can see, deploy some planes and helicopters against his people initially. But I saw a newsreel where he, at one point, orders an airstrike against his own people, and 2 Mirage jets defected on him. They just flew to Malta. So, and that was another problem Gadaffi had, reminiscent of the situation that happened in Syria, where he loses segments of his army. Right? It's not just fighting rebels and partisans. Sections of his military defected. So when you see images of this conflict, the people on the street are relatively well armed. Like these Technicals, Toyota Hiluxes with anti-aircraft guns on them, guys with RPGs. The people, citizens, were well armed, and there was thousands, tens of thousands of them. Improvised, rocket launches there. So the rebels still hold Sirte. They're using air power, their advantage in air power. They're bombing Al Jafra. So you can see they sprung back here. And it looks like they can advance the front again. Because it takes time for me to amass units, or move units to the front lines. Without exposing my tanks, right? Like you can't. The problem here is there is a great urge to just charge forward with armor and move the rebels back as quickly as possible. But you have to resist that temptation, because if you ever lose your tanks, you won't be able to replace them. And if you do, then you're just, you won't have those infantry to soak losses. So they destroy the Beni Walid pocket here. So now the country's basically split in half. Rebels have the eastern portion. Gadaffi still has a comfortable position in the west. Yeah, it's hard to... You can't just charge across the map easily. You have to set things up, which is a good learning scenario to minimize losses. If I'm going to advance with just tanks, artillery, and men, I want to be losing just men. But it takes time for them to move up to the front. TripleA got bombed again. He's pretty strong in Ajdabia, yeah. It's a strong enough position to hold off or take back Sirte, Al Jafra. It's those 5 planes. The advantage in aircraft really is difficult to manage for the regime. You can move in the south, but always have to be mindful of what can counterattack your front lines. So if I'm going to have any tanks forward, they better be screened heavily with infantry. You'll always be mindful of what can hit your forces in a counterattack. So you really have to hold those armored brigades in reserve in this game, and only use them in attacks when the time is right. And now is not the time, it looks like. So there we go. Got the rebels now penned up in Gadaffi. It's still a strong pocket, especially with his air superiority. And it's powerful enough to explode. Yeah, see? Took back Al Kufra, easy. Cert as well. Yeah, I'm gonna forget. I'm not gonna do technological advancements anymore. You might actually get free rolls. At certain points in the game, it gives you free tech rolls, but yeah, spending a lot on them is not the way to win this scenario, in my opinion. It is simply the best strategy is to simply outproduce the rebels with infantry. And accept the fact that there will be situations where they can counterattack, and your losses have to be absorbed by infantry and not tanks. Because I say I have 9 brigades to his 4. So they can only be pushed forward in an offensive if they have at least an equal number of screening infantry. Attack into search. Fails. Al Kufra, I got him there, but that tank's gonna die, so that comes with a cost. So once again, he's gonna be able to counterattack out of Gadaffi, probably lose Al Kufra again. Won't be able to stabilize that front until I get large numbers of infantry move forward. That's the only way I can see making progress here. Maybe just build more anti-aircraft guns too, move them up so the rebels risk losing aircraft if they include air power in a counterattack. But here's TripleA getting bombed again for 6 this time. Yeah, see, that was a free roll. Oh, just infantry. I don't see any other way to make progress here. So counterattack into Surt. Probably not use tanks. What you have to do is time a counterattack on the rebels' counterattack, a counter to a counter, that is so overwhelming that it burns through the rebels' infantry and artillery screen and is able to destroy the rebel armor. And then I think Gadaffi might be off to the races. But see, he's low on infantry as well. So the rebels have to be careful about how they counter-attack this turn out of Ajdabia. They seem to be wilting. So they're going to take Sirte. This is a measured response by the rebels. That was a good, I mean, yeah. That was a good turn. That was well executed. I mean, got back Sirte and Al Jafra again. But they don't have infantry. They're short on infantry. I'm going to buy another AA gun here. Let's start moving them forward. So it'll be a more difficult decision for the rebels to use air power in their counterattack. So I'm going to use my air force here on Sirte. I'll be able to retake Sirte and Al Jafra. We've got to get those infantry brigades moved forward as quickly as possible. So we'll see. We'll give the rebels another difficult decision here about which territory to counterattack. So obviously I've got a lot of tanks exposed in Al Jafra. It's risky. I suspect they will be counterattacked. But then I can respond from Sirte and Beni Walid if he does that. And perhaps that will be the end of the rebels, really. That would be the entire rebel army. It's going to be interesting to see if they commit the bulk of their army to a strong counterattack in Al Jafra. This is actually a trap, I think. It look like my tanks look exposed, and they are, but if the computer does a strong attack in the south, actually I rewatched that. I don't know what happened to their army there. So, yeah, that could be a trap for the... I'm, in effect, laying a trap here for the rebels. Because if they attack to the south to go after my tank brigades, they can then be counterattacked from Sirte and Beni Walid. And that would, in effect, destroy the bulk of their army. But, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, the computer retreated into Darna between Benghazi and Tobruk. So they're falling back. This is a bad sign. It's this, strategically, I guess, advisable to do that, to prolong their war effort, but I mean, they're going to have to pull a rabbit out of their hat now, because losing Ajdabia is not a good sign. That's perhaps the most valuable territory in this game. Will they have enough to counterattack? 9 tank brigades. With their planes, if they go all out, 5 aircraft, 5 tank brigades, 1 artillery, 3. I think I commit everything. It's time to gamble. Or not. Maybe one more turn. I could have probably done it. This isn't a bad move either. Because hopefully I can, if they choose to counterattack Ajdabia, they'll be left with just tanks there. And then I will be able to destroy that. Counterattack from Sirte and Al Jafra, hopefully. And I'll finally be able to move up and some anti-aircraft power from Saba. I could have done it. I probably could have done it this turn, move all the tanks into Ajdabia, but I knew this was going to happen. I mean, they have to counterattack, so it all depends on what's left here. How many hits do I get? I destroyed all their infantry. So yes, their tank. Oh, they left one tank. So they had a measured sort of counterattack there. That's the best they could hope for, but I mean, I'm going to take it right back with even greater force. And they're out of manpower, it looks like. I think this is the beginning of the end here for the rebels. So this is, the game's gone off the historical rails at this point. It's not realistic, but it's still a fun scenario to play, because in real life, Gadaffi had no ability to raise new armies, considering how he tended to rely heavily on mercenaries. And the vast majority of the civilian population was committed to overthrowing his regime. I mean, he has no pool of resources to draw from at that point, once he cast his lot in with basically foreign fighters. There's snipers from Russia and Eastern Europe that he used. Yeah, like a bunch of African troops. He had a few elite formations for sure, but you know, he's not relying on any draft from huge, you know, civilian populations, that's for sure. Everybody hated him. So now we've got 9 tank brigades moving into Ajdabia. The rebels presumably could only counter with 3 of their own, 1 infantry brigade and some artillery. So this looks like it's irreversible here. At this point, the rebellion is doomed. Even with their offshore air power, they just don't have enough on the ground to reverse the momentum here. Even with tank, like, I mean, I'm going to try and finish them off with tanks here. It'd be expensive, but they won't be able to recover. So this is an example of knowing when to commit tanks, expose them. Of course, when your opponent has no ability to recover from such a blow as that. Yes, it's expensive and inefficient. Oh, so you can see he moved in his fighters to defend Tobruk. That's a good move. That's going to be costly. So in that case, they probably have to take Benghazi and Darna and wait until the infantry from Sirte and Al Jafra move up. There we go. Benghazi. Move all the infantry into Ashdabia. Computer, I think, made a couple of really crafty decisions. It just seemed too little too late. It made a few sound decisions there on, defensively. Can't fault them, but it was ineffective at the beginning of the game, it seemed. I don't know why I'm bombing Benghazi. It's about to fall. There are 9 tank brigades ready to deliver the coup de grace, but I have to go through Darna first. He should probably... I've got anti-aircraft guns in there though. He could blitz through Darna with his armor and counterattack with his planes and do a lot of damage to my 9 armored brigades. But then I would do like a huge meat wave attack from the south out of Ashdabia into Tobruk. So he's got a big problem. The rebels are kind of forked here. It'll be interesting to see what the computer does. So he just builds more tanks. May as well waste some money. Some mechanized infantry is pretty good too. I believe that allows a infantry to blitz with a tank. But this game is over, I think. Because I've got quite a sizable army rolling into Darna. If he wants to take Ashdabia back, that's going to cost him. Bombard Tobruk with ballistic missiles. I think that destroyed, like, he's only got 4. I did more damage from rockets than he has purchasing power. So, yep, the end is nigh for the poor rebels in this version of history. If you watch the footage too, they say that. They all say the same thing when they were interviewed by Western correspondents. They said there's no fail. It's do or die. If they failed, they were dead. They knew it. So they would fight to the end, which is probably not the case on the other side if you're a mercenary. Yeah, Tobruk, I just slaughtered them in Tobruk. That was devastating. There's happy Gadaffi in happier times. Such a strange man he was. Anyway, that was a fun scenario. It was very interesting. I love like the little offbeat versions of ANA you can play. I recommend giving it a try. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more content coming soon.